Neon Genesis Evangelion, or Evangelion, or Evangelion, or however you say it, one of the most controversial and influential anime of all time. Responsible for birthing thousands of edgelords and propping up the anime girl figurine market. The 26-episode series was released in October of 1995 to critical acclaim, created by legendary animator and ultimate sad boy Hideaki Anno. A coming-of-age mech-based story that covers some of society's most pressing topics, like religion, mental health, collective trauma, growing up, loss of innocence, existentialism, and more. If you've seen EVA, you can go ahead and skip this minute. I'm just gonna lightly summarize its plot without giving away any spoilers.
In a world besieged by mysterious beings known as angels, humanity's hope lies in the hands of the Evangelion pilots. Shinji Ikari, a reluctant 14-year-old, is thrust into the cockpit of a giant biomechanical robot, Evangelion Unit 01, by his estranged father, Gendo. As Shinji grapples with his own insecurities and the weight of responsibility, he joins forces with fellow pilots Rei Ayanami and Asuka Langley. Together they must combat the existential threat posed by the enigmatic angels. Behind the scenes, the shadowy organization NERV, led by Gendo Ikari, seeks to unravel the mysteries surrounding the angels and the true purpose of the Evangelion units. As the battles intensify, the lines between man, machine, and angels blur. Neon Genesis Evangelion is not just a mech anime. It delves into the complex psychology of its characters, exploring themes of identity, existentialism, and the nature of humanity. The series challenges the very fabric of reality as the pilots confront their inner demons amidst the apocalyptic battles. In a world on the brink, can the young pilots overcome their personal struggles and save humanity from its own existential crisis?
I wanted to direct you towards what this video is really about. Technology's ever-increasing grip on our world, and how tech can help tell an impactful and lasting story. For a show that was created in the mid-1990s, Neon Genesis Evangelion holds themes that echo very powerfully into today's technologically dominated society. In EVA, our main characters must pilot giant biomechanical robots that they form deep bonds with. Young lives forever intertwined with technology. Much like our own phone and social media affected youth. Yes, iPad kids are the most boring form of Shinji piloting a mech. One of the most aesthetically appealing aspects of the show is its intricately designed visual tech. Screens that abstractly illustrate scenes and push them forward without any sort of character dialogue. These breathtaking screens pulsate, flicker, and glow, and act as a motor of the story. I'm going to be discussing and analyzing graphic design, user interfaces, and storytelling, bringing in two professional design and Evangelion experts. Let's all hop in our own mech suits. This is Dansplaining, graphic design in Neon Genesis Evangelion. There's really no better intro to Neon Genesis Evangelion's design than its opening theme. The iconic opening is scored by the track A Cruel Angel's Thesis by Yoko Takahashi. Evangelion's popularity helped the track reach platinum status in Japan, and is known as one of the most influential anime theme songs ever made. It sounds incredible as a backing track to just about anything. I mean, check this out. 残酷な天使のように少年よ神話になる青い風が今胸のドアを叩いても私だけをただ見つめて微笑んでるあなたそっと触れるもの求めることに夢中で運命さ Now, let's get into this intro. On a black screen, we see a blue imprint of a ripple on water, followed by a panned up red nebula. Then we see a symbol that represents seraphim, a more classic version of an angel, much more abstract looking than their modern cherubic versions, quickly followed by a Kabbalah variant of the Tree of Life. All of this serves as an introduction to the sheer amount of Judeo-Christian imagery used in this series. After a blue glowing blob dissolves into a gray cloud, we see our Evangelion logo type, a white all-cap serif tightly tracked together on top of it are the Japanese words for New Era and Century, with a white stroke around them. The bottom, Evangelion, has an orange/red gradient. The type is stretched vertically and outwardly. The color is likely a nod to sunset, signaling that these events take place at the very end of time, while the stretched text alludes to action sequences that our protagonists will be thrust into. Again, we see the Tree of Life, as well as some shadow portraits of our main female protagonists. Then, around 51 seconds in, we see our first glimpse of technology. This is where our intricate, colorful, and mysterious interfaces first make their appearance. Draped in an orange, yellow, and green gradient with a digital clock that reads 5 hours. The words above it an ominous, active time remaining, another nod to the impending action. We also see the word racing, lit up with a red bar beneath it, preceded by stop, slow, and normal. Clearly the screen is preempting some kind of stressful experience, followed by Shinji sitting in the mech. Now we're seeing the biomechanical Evangelion in action, an iconic purple and green exterior, with outstretched, glowing orange angel wings and a red jagged maw. Suddenly we see large, white, all-caps sans serif type flash quickly across a black screen. These serve as lightning-fast introductions to more plot details. Test type, EVA 01, the main mech fighter. Absolute terror field, an Angel and Eva protection tool. Angels, the antagonist. Tokyo 3, the setting. Prototype EVA 00, a mech piloted by Rei Ayanami. Production model EVA 02, another mech piloted by Asuka Langley. We also see the Nerve logo. A bright red all-caps serif NE and RV, line broken, slanted, and divided by a fig leaf. A symbol referencing the leaves covering Adam and Eve. Their slogan, God's in heaven, all's right with the world, is a call out to the Robert Browning poem, Pippa Passes, which serves as a reminder of morality existing in a very, very messed up world. Perhaps the rifted text is a visual reference to the fractured morals that Nerve takes part in. The crest of seal also makes its first appearance, a rainbow-filled outline of an upside-down triangle adorned with a total of 7 eyes, 3 on the left, 4 on the right. Many think this crest represents the 7 eyes of God, as described in the Old Testament. The triangle could represent life and fertility, or it could represent the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, depending on how you look at it. Rounding out the last 20 seconds, we see a glowing red second impact in an all-caps sans serif type. A clear warning sign immediately followed by Satellite Photo 2000, showing the second impact happening on a heat map with several orange X's overlaid on top. Next, we see Adam in black, all caps, sans serif, on a white background. Followed by this 6th angel pattern blood type blue interface, showing the existence of a 6th angel through genetic imaging that looks like a sequenced genome. Finally, we see an enigmatic script, a close-up of a page from the Dead Sea Scroll possessed by Seal. Apparently the letters don't mean anything, but are likely severed from the ancient Hebrew alphabet. So Evangelion came out in 1995 and has been hugely influential for the past 30 years basically. But this design and visual aesthetic didn't come out of thin air. Makes you wonder who Hideaki Anno and the Gainax design team's inspirations were. Landmark films and previous anime series that heavily influenced the look of Evangelion. Firstly, there's 2001: A Space Odyssey. The 1968 sci-fi classic may be one of the most influential fantasy films of the 20th century. It's got a ton in common with Evangelion, including sparse dialogue, use of computer interfaces, and extremely futuristic technology in comparison to the time it was released. It also deals with similar themes like the relationship between man and machine, including artificial intelligence, automation, and human evolution. Next, there's Blade Runner, a film that shows a world that's deeply intertwined with technology, but is failing in spite of it. Replicants in Blade Runner have a lot in common with mech pilots, biologically fused techno-humans, beings that struggle with their very existence in a human world, torn between artificial and real. Evangelion creator Hideaki Anno's favorite show growing up was Ultraman. Ultraman's design and both Eva and the Angel's designs share some visual DNA. I mean, it's giant robots fighting giant angel religious monster beast thingies, right? Anno eventually went on to direct Shin Ultraman in 2022. And in the realm of anime, there's obviously Mobile Suit Gundam, one of the first hugely popular mech anime. The show also focuses on children piloting giant mechanical robots on a mission to save the world. A complex political show that forced conversation about greater topics, all behind a catchy marketing giant robot product line. Gundam is essentially the outline for an entire genre of mecha anime that continue to be released today. In fact, Anno got his first animation credit working on the mech-based anime Super Dimension Macross before he even finished college. While still in school, he produced the legendary shorts Daikon 3 and 4 with Hiroyuki Yamaga and Takami Akai, with whom he went on to form Gainax. With this production under his belt, he was able to score a role as an animator on the Hayao Miyazaki directed film Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, another movie where a child must attempt to protect a damn near apocalyptic world from destruction from a dark and mystical force. Lastly, there are several scenes from the 1985 OVA Angel's Egg that clearly inspired Evangelion. Especially the opening scene that places the characters in this red liminal space that seems to exist beyond human comprehension and creation. This is my friend Albie, a professional UI designer and EVA fan. He's going to talk to you all about user interface design.
Let's make an important distinction. We have UI that we use in our everyday lives, on our phones, our work applications, our cars, etc. And then there's UI in works of fiction, or fantasy UI. There are a few key challenges for designing fantasy UI. 1. It needs to be readable in the amount of time it's shown on screen. 2. You need to consider the way it sounds, animates, and how characters interact with it. 3. Making sure it's clearly important for story progression. 4. It needs to feel believable within its world. Well, I think Evangelion's fantasy UI hits on all those points. What sets it apart is its bold and layered art direction that's heavily informed by its story and setting and feels right at home in its universe. UI is a tool that reflects the intricacies and priorities of the collective entity that it's designed for. NERV, the organization that we follow throughout the series, clearly prioritizes defense and security. And we see that manifest in the form of mountain rockets, skyscraper Tetris, rods from God, weaponized cable cars, the kitchen sink, the Hogwarts Express, and last but not least, giant armored biomechanical combat beefcakes, piloted by children. The UI in particular serves to communicate the fragile complexity of operating these. We observe a technologically heavy-handed approach to survival, with so much evidence of surveillance and urban militarization throughout the series. An example of this is the plethora of shots we get through the camera's perspective. A lot of these use a grid consisting of short crosses that mimic military satellite surveillance. But I wager that these crosses could be more biblical in symbolism. Speaking of urban militarization, I think an important influence for the UI design is the architecture of the series, which is another aspect of world building, no pun intended. It's probably no coincidence that brutalist architecture is often referenced in dystopian works of fiction, Evangelion included. If you compare these examples to shots of Tokyo 3, you can see that there's an influence. The brutalist style is defined by massive forms, unusual shapes, rough surfaces, and an expression of structure, which we see reflected in the UI. The UI plays with scale. It takes up so much space on the screen, it's right up in your face. There are even frames where it obscures the characters. There's an interesting mix of beveled edges, juxtaposed with squiggly lines and sine waves, in addition to grids and dynamic elements. Repetition of elements that create visual texture, even though most of it is flat. You can tell underneath all the animations, there's still a grid system or structure that houses all of the UI. It's dramatic, ominous, and it honors the world that it's designed for. And it's pretty dope. As a storytelling element, UI hits that sweet spot of showing and telling us what is happening, while still feeling grounded in the context of the universe. Viewers are given information at the same time the characters are, allowing us to share their perspective through the lens of UI. It's a key world-building element that lends credibility to the technology of the fictional world. In Evangelion, it adds tension to every fight, where consequences are costly and devastating. It is a device for viewers and characters to rationalize the terrifying and absurd phenomena that we witness, by literally spelling out what we're seeing and what is happening. It reminds us that we as humans are small and squishy, and that we need to rely on our ingenuity to fight.
I've also brought along my friend Emily to help out with this video. She's a professional graphic designer and a huge Evangelion fan. Alright, get in the robot, Emily.
The EVA universe relies on two distinct motifs.
The stark clinical arena of government-funded mecha,
and the rich classical world of traditional Bible imagery and orchestral music. So it's only fitting that the type treatments fall into those two camps. There's the pragmatic, all-caps sans serif displays of the UI that telegraph the status of Shinji and his fellow pilots, and then there's the more decorative instances of Times New Roman condensed bold and lockups that appear intermittently during monologues and in between each episode. The central conflict of the series is Shinji's struggle to balance his desires and emotions against the immense responsibility that he's saddled with. To that end, the type styles at odds here represent intrinsic and external forces. Times New Roman is often used to express a character's thoughts and emotions, while the sans serif fonts in the UI displays explicitly denote the physical conditions of battle. You can even get all Freudian with it and assign the type styles to the id and the ego, or you can simply throw your hands up and enjoy the fact that it looks cool. But the two things that Shinji can't escape are his responsibilities at NERV and his own thorny inner monologue. While watching EVA, you might think you need to take a course in data visualization to understand exactly what's happening to Shinji's connection with Unit 1 as he gets speared in the face with an alien bone growth. But you can save yourself the trouble. These charts aren't exactly scientific. Sure, some of them have X and Y axes and a bunch of SAT words, but their main purpose in the show is to quantify the damage being done to these kids. Take, for instance, the psychographic display from Asuka's violent mental invasion by the angel Ariel in episode 22. This is not data. There's no chronology in there, and whatever levels those numbers are meant to denote are clearly going haywire. Asuka's experiencing unprecedented psychological torment, and it doesn't take a radiology tech to understand that and feel horrified. At a glance, this design hammers home the fact that this fight is a total disaster, the repercussions of which will ultimately put the best girl out of commission for the rest of the show's run. Add that to the fact that it's so visually striking, and you've got the most artful mental breakdown probably ever. Look at those scribbles. It's practically German expressionism. Baby girl is not coming back from that. Nonetheless, EVA excels in its information design. As we'll see later on, the charts make exactly as much sense as they need to. Evangelion's UI is based on the era of cathode ray screens, where graphical limitations meant that information was displayed in one color, like green phosphorus, or in this show's case, amber. NERV officially answers to the United Nations, and their methods are often at odds with other governmental bodies. We'll suspend our disbelief that taxpayer funding can support a militarized system of humanoid robots housed deep in a vast subterranean base. So it makes sense that NERV would have some sort of budget to adhere to. And thank God they did, because if this show looked like actual computers in 1995 did, we'd be making a very different video. And keep in mind, EVA is set in the year 2015. Even in 95, computer graphics had become this sophisticated. So why does NERV, a massive organization that functions as humanity's last defense against the angels, use such Spartan, obsolete display settings? Aside from fictional budgetary concerns, we can look to science. Studies have shown that exposure to dim yellow and orange colored lights may increase melatonin production and create a soothing effect, especially compared to blue light. NERV traumatizes its pilots and staff regularly, so any semblance of serenity is sorely needed. But there's another notable amber element in the series that may have influenced the design choices made by NERV. It's LCL, the amniotic fluid that fills the cockpit and connects pilots with their EVA units, much like a fetus in the womb. LCL is ubiquitous throughout the series, and by the end of the story, there's literally oceans of it, due in no small part to the actions of NERV. Every aspect of NERV's hardware is delicately interconnected, and the software is no exception. In that sense, maybe it's all just part of the plan.
In the opening intro, we got a small taste into how Neon Genesis Evangelion uses graphic design to help tell a compelling story. Now let's dive into a few of the most important user interfaces. Here, we see a diagram of the biology of an EVA unit. The key storytelling aspect that this interface enforces is that these units are not just machines. They're biomechanical beings that need human life force and fusion to function. This almost looks like a full body X-ray or CAT scan. With NERV's advanced Magi computers, they can analyze and keep track of the EVA's health and well-being, as well as its teenaged pilot. In glowing green and orange letters, we see human body parts listed, from the buttock to the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell. We also see our EVA divided in half, which is 0-0, piloted by Rei Ayanami. The left side is red and orange, currently under some type of duress. It almost looks as if it's shattered and coming apart in comparison to the right side, which looks intact and is a more chill blue and indigo color. This is a monitor showing how being in an EVA affects the mental state of their pilots, Shinji, Rei, and Asuka. The fact that the largest all caps words are mental toxicity level isn't a good sign. This means that they must keep a close eye on how much horrific energy enters the mental state of these pilots before it's too late. NERV is also clearly keeping track of how long these pilots can last, a draining experience to say the least, obviously causing severe trauma and beyond, as we see in the plot. These blue horizontal bars are fluctuating between the words caution and damage, showing that danger is imminent. During the SEAL invasion of the NERV HQ in Tokyo, we see this interface. It shows that the Tokyo HQ is the last line of defense in a total global invasion. In a simple flash of a chart, we can get the outline of how a battle is about to play out. The Red Magi 2 through 6 in Massachusetts, Beijing, Matsuhiro, Berlin, and Hamburg are all angered and positioned with blue dotted lines aimed right at Tokyo's defenses. Within the red to green gradient grid, we see the Tokyo 3 has their own defenses in place, including the left and right flank, along with 3 defense lines as a final defense zone. Here we see 3 names, Casper, Melchior, and Balthazar. In the Bible, specifically the book of Matthew, these are the names of the 3 kings, or 3 wise men, who visit Jesus after his birth. In Evangelion, they represent the 3 Magi computers that NERV is using to defeat the angels. Just like the EVAs, the 3 specific Magi computers are biomechanic and have individual brains that make each of them unique in how they reach final conclusions. Magi are critical in the function of NERV, as well as piloting the EVA units. They appear to have an almost godlike ability to run probabilities that governments across the globe trust in order to run society. In this graphic, we see each computer being hacked into by the angel known as Ariel. In the top left of this screen, we see that it's the Da Nang Vietnam defense screen. On the right, we see that a collapse is coming in about 2 2/3 days. On the bottom left, we see project number 666, a number that's synonymous with the holy number of the beast or devil. It's also a triangular number with added symbolism to seal the 3 kings and the Holy Trinity. On the interior, we see the Magi's core health. The 4 terms corresponding to each of them are different parts of the brain: the cerebrum, cerebellum, callosum, and medulla oblongata. Although they aren't spelled the exact same, it can be inferred that these are the 4 parts of the Magi's brain, its biomechanical connection to mankind. Animated series like Kill la Kill, Serial Experiments Lain, Gurren Lagann, Attack on Titan, and Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. Video games like the Bayonetta series, Persona series, the Nier series, Xenogears, Shadow of the Colossus, Ico, and most recently Bomb Rush Cyberpunk. And a few other miscellaneous things like graphic designer David Rudnick, the Netflix series Altered Carbon, and this fashion line by Undercover. For a show as serious as Neon Genesis Evangelion, it's nice to know that people have been able to see comedy in it as well. There are dozens of incredible ways that people have interpreted the show's design for parody, like these: King of the Hill, Super Mario 64, Seinfeld, Mega 64 EVA in 5 minutes, and this Newgrounds cartoon parody as well. After researching this much EVA, I feel like my brain has gone through the second impact. Thank you for joining me on this incredible graphic design journey through a supremely important animated series. We've explored what Neon Genesis Evangelion exactly is and how its design helps tell an insanely complex story. More specifically, we've explored its use of user interfaces to push the story along and give added context. Filmmakers and creatives alike can stand to learn a lot from Neon Genesis Evangelion as technology becomes a larger and larger force in our lives. It's important to look back at shows like EVA, who have done justice to the art of graphic design. If you've never seen Neon Genesis Evangelion, I highly recommend it. Strap in though, it's a really, really weird ride. Anyways, see you later.